Right now, as you're listening to this, there are problems in your life that feel impossible to solve. Maybe it's a relationship that's falling apart, a career that's stuck, financial stress that keeps you awake at night, or personal habits that you just can't seem to break. You've tried everything you can think of, but nothing works. The problems keep coming back, sometimes stronger than before. Here's what I'm about to tell you that will change everything. The reason you're stuck isn't because your problems are too complex or because you're not smart enough. It's because you've never been taught how to actually solve problems. You've been using trial and error, hoping something will work. But hope is not a strategy. What I'm about to share with you is a systematic approach that works for any problem, no matter how big, how complex, or how long you've been dealing with it. This isn't motivation. This isn't positive thinking. This is a step-by-step framework that transforms chaos into clarity and obstacles into opportunities. By the end of this video, you'll have a mental toolkit that most people will never possess. You'll know exactly how to break down any challenge, eliminate confusion, and execute solutions that actually work. The difference between people who thrive and people who survive isn't luck. It's their ability to solve problems faster and more effectively than everyone else. Chapter 1. The reason most people stay stuck in the same problems year after year isn't because they lack intelligence or resources. It's because they've been programmed to think about problems in completely the wrong way. From childhood, we're taught that problems are bad things that happen to us, obstacles that block our path, or signs that something is wrong with our lives. This mindset is not just incorrect, it's destructive. Let me share with you a fundamental truth that will shift everything. Problems are not your enemy. Problems are information. Every challenge you face is your life's way of giving you data about what needs to change, what skills you need to develop, or what direction you need to move. The moment you stop seeing problems as attacks and start seeing them as intelligence, everything changes. Think about the most successful people you know or have studied. Do they have fewer problems than everyone else? Absolutely not. They have more problems, bigger problems, and more complex problems. The difference is that they've learned to see problems as fuel rather than barriers. They understand that every problem solved makes them stronger, smarter, and more capable of handling the next challenge. This is why poor people stay poor and rich people get richer. It's not about money, it's about problem-solving capacity. Poor people avoid problems, complain about problems, and wait for someone else to solve their problems. Rich people seek out problems, embrace difficult challenges, and build their wealth by solving problems that others won't touch. But here's where most people go wrong. They think that having a positive attitude about problems is enough. They try to reframe their mindset without actually developing the skills to solve anything. Mindset matters, but mindset without method is just wishful thinking. The truth is that problem solving is a learnable skill. It's not a talent you're born with or without. It's a systematic process that can be taught, practiced, and mastered. Just like you can learn to drive a car or play an instrument, you can learn to solve problems with precision and confidence. Most people approach problems reactively. Something goes wrong, and they immediately start trying solutions without understanding what they're actually dealing with. It's like trying to fix a car engine without knowing how engines work. You might get lucky occasionally, but most of the time, you'll make things worse. The elite problem solvers, the people who seem to have solutions for everything, follow a process. They don't just jump into action. They don't just think positive thoughts. They use a systematic approach that breaks down complexity into manageable pieces, identifies root causes instead of symptoms, and generates solutions that actually address the core issue. This process has 4 fundamental stages, And every problem you'll ever face, no matter how unique it seems, will follow these same patterns. First is problem identification, where you learn to see what you're actually dealing with instead of what you think you're dealing with. Second is root cause analysis, where you dig deeper than surface symptoms to find the real source of the issue. Third is solution generation, where you create multiple options instead of settling for the first idea that comes to mind. Fourth is implementation and optimization, where you execute your solution and refine it based on results. But before we dive into this framework, you need to understand the mental traps that keep most people stuck. These are the invisible barriers that prevent clear thinking and effective action. If you don't recognize these traps in yourself, no problem-solving framework will help you. The first trap is emotional hijacking. When problems arise, especially unexpected ones, your brain's emotional centers activate before your logical thinking centers. You feel stressed, angry, frustrated, or panicked, and these emotions cloud your judgment. You make decisions based on how you feel, rather than what the situation actually requires. Elite problem solvers have trained themselves to pause, breathe, and shift from emotional reaction to analytical thinking. The second trap is assumption addiction. Your brain is constantly making assumptions to save energy. It fills in gaps with information from past experiences, even when those experiences aren't relevant to the current situation. You assume you know what the problem is before you've properly investigated. You assume certain solutions won't work before you've tested them. These assumptions limit your options and keep you trapped in old patterns. The third trap is solution attachment. You fall in love with your first idea and become emotionally invested in making it work, even when evidence shows it's not the right approach. You waste time, energy, and resources trying to force a solution instead of stepping back and generating better options. The fourth trap is perfectionist paralysis. You wait for the perfect solution before taking any action. You overanalyze, over-research, and over-plan while the problem gets worse. You convince yourself that you need more information, more time, or more resources before you can move forward. Understanding these traps is crucial because they operate below your conscious awareness. You don't realize you're falling into them until you're already stuck. But once you know what to look for, you can catch yourself and redirect your thinking. The most important thing to understand is that problem solving is not about eliminating all problems from your life. That's impossible and would actually make you weaker. Problems are like physical exercise for your mind. The more challenging problems you solve, the stronger your problem-solving muscles become. Chapter 2. Before you can solve any problem effectively, you must first understand what you're actually dealing with. This sounds obvious, but it's the step that trips up most people. They react to symptoms instead of addressing root causes. They solve the wrong problem perfectly instead of solving the right problem adequately. Problem identification is both an art and a science. It requires you to step back from your immediate emotional reaction and observe the situation with the detachment of a detective. You're not trying to fix anything yet. You're trying to understand what's really happening. The first technique is called the 5-layer method. Most people see only the surface layer of their problems. They see the argument with their spouse, the difficult boss, the financial stress, or the health issue. But these are often just the visible manifestations of deeper issues. Layer 1 is the surface problem, what you immediately notice or what triggered your stress. Layer 2 is the pattern, how often this type of situation occurs and under what circumstances. Layer 3 is the underlying system, the environmental or structural factors that allow this problem to exist. Layer 4 is the root behavior, the habits, decisions, or actions that created the conditions for this problem. Layer 5 is the core belief or assumption that drives the behavior. Let me give you an example. Surface problem. You're always running late, and it's causing stress at work and in relationships. Pattern. This happens most mornings, and whenever you have important meetings. Underlying system. You don't have consistent routines. You underestimate how long things take, and you try to pack too much into your schedule. Root behavior. You say yes to too many commitments, and you don't plan buffer time. Core belief. You believe that being busy makes you important, and you're afraid that saying no will disappoint people. Once you identify the core belief, you can see that this isn't really a time management problem. It's a boundary and self-worth problem. No amount of time management techniques will solve it permanently until you address the underlying belief system. The second technique is called problem mapping. You're going to write down everything connected to your problem, no matter how tangentially related it might seem. Start with the problem in the center of a page. Then branch out with all the factors that contribute to it, influence it, or are affected by it. Include people involved, environmental factors, timing issues, resource constraints, emotional impacts, and long-term consequences. Don't judge or filter anything at this stage. You're creating a visual map of the problem's ecosystem. This technique reveals connections you wouldn't normally see. You might realize that your relationship problem is connected to work stress, which is connected to financial pressure, which is connected to career dissatisfaction, which is connected to unclear life goals. What seemed like separate problems are actually different symptoms of the same underlying issue. The third technique is perspective shifting. You're going to examine your problem from multiple viewpoints. How would your problem look to someone who loves you? How would it look to someone who doesn't care about you at all? How would it look to someone from a completely different culture or time period? How would it look to someone who's already solved a similar problem? Each perspective reveals different aspects of the situation. The person who loves you might see self-imposed limitations you don't notice. The objective observer might see simple solutions you're overlooking because you're too emotionally invested. The cultural outsider might see assumptions you're making that aren't actually true or necessary. The fourth technique is timeline analysis. Map out how your problem developed over time. When did you first notice it? What was happening in your life when it started? How has it changed or evolved? What have you already tried, and what were the results? This historical perspective often reveals patterns you've missed. You might discover that your problem always gets worse during certain seasons, after specific types of events, or when you're dealing with particular stressors. These patterns give you clues about underlying causes and potential solutions. The fifth technique is impact assessment. You're going to quantify the real cost of this problem in your life. Not just the obvious costs, but the hidden ones too. What is it costing you in time, money, energy, relationships, opportunities, health, and peace of mind? What would your life look like if this problem didn't exist? What becomes possible when you solve it? This isn't about making yourself feel bad. It's about creating urgency and motivation. When you fully understand what your problem is really costing you, you'll be more committed to finding a solution. The sixth technique is resource inventory. List everything you have available to address this problem. Include your skills, knowledge, experience, relationships, financial resources, time, energy, and any tools or systems you can access. Also include resources you could potentially access if needed. Most people underestimate their available resources. They focus on what they don't have instead of leveraging what they do have. This inventory helps you see possibilities you might have overlooked. The final technique in problem identification is constraint identification. What are the real limitations you're working within? Which constraints are actual facts and which are assumptions you're making. Which constraints can be changed, worked around, or eliminated entirely. For example, you might assume you can't change careers because you have a mortgage. But is that actually true? Could you reduce expenses, increase income gradually, or find a transition path that doesn't require an immediate income drop? Challenge every constraint to determine if it's real or imaginary. By the end of this identification process, you should have a completely different understanding of your problem than when you started. You'll see it as part of a larger system rather than an isolated incident. You'll understand the deeper patterns and root causes. You'll have clarity about what's really at stake and what resources you have available. This clarity is the foundation for everything that follows. You cannot solve a problem you don't understand, and you cannot understand a problem you haven't properly investigated. Chapter 3. Once you've identified what you're actually dealing with, the next step is to find the root cause. This is where most people fail. They treat symptoms instead of addressing the source. They put band-aids on problems that require surgery. They solve the same problem over and over because they never eliminate what's creating it. Root cause analysis is like being a detective. You're looking for evidence, following clues, and building a case based on facts rather than assumptions. You're going deeper than the obvious explanations to find what's really driving the situation. The first method is called the 5 whys technique. You start with your problem statement and ask why it's happening. Then you ask why that reason is happening. You continue asking why 5 times or until you reach a root cause that you can actually control or influence. Let's say your problem is that you're not saving money despite earning a decent income. Why aren't you saving money? Because you spend everything you earn. Why do you spend everything you earn? Because you have a lot of monthly expenses. Why do you have so many monthly expenses? Because you've committed to subscriptions, payments, and lifestyle choices that consume your entire income. Why did you make those commitments? Because you wanted to enjoy your money and you thought you'd start saving later when you earned more. Why did you think you'd save later instead of now? Because you believe that happiness comes from spending money on experiences and things. And you're afraid that saving means depriving yourself. Now you can see that the root cause isn't a budgeting problem or an income problem. It's a belief system about money and happiness. Until you address that belief system, no budgeting technique will create lasting change. The second method is systems thinking. Every problem exists within a system of interconnected parts. To find the root cause, you need to understand how these parts influence each other. Draw out the system that surrounds your problem. If your problem is poor health, your system might include your daily schedule, work, stress, social environment, family habits, available time, knowledge about nutrition and exercise, emotional coping mechanisms, and social pressures. Look for the leverage points in this system, the places where small changes can create big results. You might discover that your health problem isn't caused by lack of willpower or knowledge. It might be caused by a work schedule that doesn't allow time for meal preparation, which leads to eating fast food, which creates energy crashes, which leads to caffeine dependence, which disrupts sleep, which increases stress, which makes healthy choices even harder. The leverage point might be negotiating a different work schedule or finding ways to prepare healthy meals in advance. Attacking the problem at this systemic level is much more effective than trying to rely on willpower alone. The third method is pattern recognition. Look at your history with this type of problem. When else have you experienced something similar? What were the common factors? What was different about the times you successfully handled it versus the times you struggled? Let's say you have a pattern of starting projects enthusiastically but never finishing them. Look at all the projects you've started. What did they have in common? Were they too ambitious? Did you lack a clear plan? Did you get distracted by new opportunities? Did you lose motivation when the initial excitement wore off? Did you lack accountability or support systems? You might discover that your root cause isn't laziness or lack of discipline. It might be that you consistently underestimate the time and effort required, or that you choose projects based on fantasy rather than realistic assessment of your capacity and interest level. The fourth method is environmental analysis. Your problems don't exist in a vacuum. They're influenced by your physical environment, social environment, and information environment. What in your surroundings is contributing to or maintaining this problem? If your problem is procrastination, look at your workspace. Is it cluttered and distracting? Are you trying to work in the same space where you relax and entertain yourself? Are you surrounded by people who also procrastinate? Are you consuming media that reinforces limiting beliefs about productivity? Sometimes the root cause is as simple as environmental design that makes the wrong choices easier than the right choices. Changing your environment can eliminate the need for willpower entirely. The fifth method is emotion tracking. Many problems are driven by unresolved emotions or emotional patterns that operate below conscious awareness. Start paying attention to what you're feeling before, during, and after your problem occurs. If your problem is overeating, track not just what you eat, but what you're feeling when you reach for food. Are you actually hungry? Or are you stressed, bored, lonely, or celebrating? Are you eating to avoid dealing with something else? Are you using food to regulate emotions that you don't know how to handle directly? The root cause of overeating is rarely hunger. It's usually an emotional regulation strategy that worked at some point, but is now creating more problems than it solves. The sixth method is assumption challenging. List all the assumptions you're making about your problem and systematically challenge each one. What if the opposite were true? What if your assumption is only partially true? What if it's true in some contexts, but not others? If your problem is feeling stuck in your career, you might assume that changing direction would require starting over completely, that you're too old to make a change, that you don't have the right connections, or that you can't afford a temporary income reduction. Challenge each assumption. Is starting over really necessary? Or could you transition gradually? Are there examples of people who made successful changes at your age or older? Are connections really required? Or are there other ways to enter a new field? Many problems persist because we accept limitations that aren't actually real. Challenging your assumptions opens up possibilities you couldn't see before. The seventh method is stakeholder analysis. Who else is affected by your problem? Who benefits from the current situation staying the same? Who would be impacted if you solved it? Sometimes problems persist because solving them would require other people to change, and they're resisting that change consciously or unconsciously. If your problem is working too many hours, consider who benefits from your overwork. Does your boss rely on your willingness to handle extra responsibilities? Does your family depend on the overtime income? Do you get validation from being seen as indispensable? Are you avoiding personal relationships or responsibilities by staying busy with work? Understanding these dynamics helps you see why change feels difficult and what you'll need to address beyond just managing your own time better. The final method is resource gap analysis. Compare what you need to solve this problem with what you currently have. The gap between these two things often reveals the root cause. You might think you need more time, money, or knowledge, but the real gap might be in your beliefs about what's possible, your willingness to ask for help, or your ability to prioritize effectively. Root cause analysis takes patience and honesty. You have to be willing to look past comfortable explanations to find uncomfortable truths. You have to be willing to take responsibility for your part in creating or maintaining the problem, even when there are external factors involved. But this process is liberation. When you find the real root cause, you stop wasting time on solutions that can't work. You stop repeating the same patterns. You gain the power to create lasting change because you're finally addressing what actually needs to be fixed. Chapter 4. Now that you understand your problem and have identified its root cause, it's time to generate solutions. This is where most people's creativity and strategic thinking either shines or fails them completely. The difference between people who find breakthrough solutions and people who stay stuck using the same ineffective approaches comes down to how they generate and evaluate options. Most people generate solutions the wrong way. They go with the first idea that comes to mind, usually something they've tried before, or something obvious that everyone else would think of. They limit themselves to solutions that feel comfortable or familiar. They don't push past their initial thoughts to find more creative and effective possibilities. Elite problem solvers approach solution generation systematically. They use specific techniques to break out of conventional thinking and explore possibilities that others miss. They generate multiple options before evaluating any of them. They separate the creative phase from the critical phase to avoid shutting down promising ideas too early. The first technique is brainstorming with constraints. Instead of trying to think of any possible solution, you're going to brainstorm solutions within specific parameters. This might seem limiting, but constraints actually boost creativity by forcing your brain to think differently. Set different constraint scenarios. What if you had unlimited money but only 1 week to solve this? What if you had no money but unlimited time? What if you could only use resources you already have? What if you had to solve this problem in a way that also helped someone else? What if you had to solve it without anyone knowing you were working on it? Each constraint forces you to consider different angles and possibilities. The solution you find under one constraint might be adaptable to your actual circumstances, or it might inspire a completely different approach. The second technique is perspective multiplication. Generate solutions from different viewpoints. How would a business consultant approach this problem? How would an artist approach it? How would someone from a different culture handle it? How would someone who's completely unqualified but fearless tackle it? How would someone with completely different values or priorities solve it? Each perspective brings different assumptions, priorities, and creative approaches. A business consultant might focus on efficiency and ROI. An artist might prioritize creative expression and emotional impact. Someone from a different culture might see social or family dynamics you're overlooking. Someone unqualified might suggest something so simple that experts would never consider it. The third technique is solution scaling. Generate solutions at different scales and intensities. What's the minimal viable solution that would make some improvement? What's the moderate solution that would create significant change? What's the maximum solution that would completely transform the situation? What's the radical solution that would eliminate the entire category of problem? For example, if your problem is feeling disconnected from friends, the minimal solution might be sending one text message per week to maintain contact. The moderate solution might be scheduling monthly group activities. The maximum solution might be planning a reunion trip or moving closer to your friend group. The radical solution might be building such a strong sense of self that you don't need external validation from friendships. Each scale reveals different possibilities and helps you see the full range of options available. The fourth technique is reverse engineering. Find examples of people who have solved similar problems successfully and work backwards to understand how they did it. This isn't about copying their exact approach, but about understanding the principles and strategies that made their solution work. Research case studies, read biographies, find interviews, or directly contact people who've faced similar challenges. What did they do that others don't? What assumptions did they challenge? What resources did they leverage? What mistakes did they avoid? What would they do differently if they had to solve the problem again? The fifth technique is component mixing. Break your problem down into components and generate solutions for each piece separately. Then look for ways to combine solutions from different components to create hybrid approaches. If your problem is starting a business while working full-time, your components might include time management, skill development, initial funding, market research, product development, and customer acquisition. Generate solutions for each component. Then look for creative combinations. Maybe you use your lunch breaks for market research, your commute time for skill development podcasts, your weekends for product development, and your existing network for initial customers. The sixth technique is assumption reversal. List the assumptions that most people make about solving this type of problem. Then deliberately generate solutions that reverse those assumptions. If the common assumption is that changing careers requires going back to school, generate solutions that don't require formal education. If the assumption is that starting a business requires significant capital, generate solutions that require no upfront investment. If the assumption is that fixing a relationship requires both people to change, generate solutions where only you change your approach. The seventh technique is timeline variation. Generate solutions for different time horizons. What could you do in the next hour? What could you accomplish this week? What becomes possible over the next month? What could you achieve in a year? What would be possible if you had 5 years to solve this? Different time horizons open up different possibilities. The 1-hour solution might be a phone call that changes everything. The 1-week solution might involve research and planning. The 1-month solution might include skill development or relationship building. The 1-year solution might involve major life changes or career transitions. The 8th technique is resource substitution. Generate solutions that use completely different types of resources than what you initially considered. If your first instinct is to solve the problem with money, generate solutions using time, relationships, skills, or creativity instead. If you thought you needed more knowledge, generate solutions using existing experience or learning by doing approaches. This technique often reveals that you have more options than you realized. You might not have the financial resources to hire an expert, but you might have the relationship resources to find a mentor. You might not have the time to research extensively, but you might have the creativity to test small experiments. The 9th technique is stakeholder solutions. Generate solutions from the perspective of everyone affected by or involved in the problem. What would solve this problem? For your boss? For your family? For your customers? For your community? For people facing similar challenges? Sometimes the best solution serves multiple stakeholders simultaneously. Sometimes you realize that what looks like your problem is actually someone else's problem that you've been trying to solve. Sometimes you discover that other people have resources or motivation to help that you hadn't considered. The final technique is future back thinking. Imagine that it's 1 year from now and you've successfully solved this problem. Work backwards from that success to figure out what must have happened to get there. What decisions did you make? What actions did you take? What help did you get? What obstacles did you overcome? This technique bypasses the mental blocks that prevent you from seeing possibilities. When you assume the problem is already solved, your brain stops focusing on why things won't work and starts revealing how they could work. By the end of this solution generation phase, you should have dozens of potential approaches. Don't evaluate them yet. Don't worry about whether they're realistic or practical. Just get them all out of your head and onto paper. The evaluation comes next. But first, you need to give your creative mind full permission to explore without judgment. Chapter 5. Having multiple potential solutions is worthless if you can't determine which approach will actually work in your specific situation. This evaluation phase separates effective problem solvers from people who stay stuck in endless analysis or jump into action without thinking through the consequences. Most people evaluate solutions based on gut feeling, what seems easiest, or what worked for someone else in a completely different situation. This leads to wasted time, failed attempts, and growing frustration. You need a systematic approach to determine which solution has the highest probability of success given your circumstances, resources, and constraints. The first evaluation criterion is feasibility assessment. For each potential solution, honestly assess whether you can actually implement it given your current resources and constraints. This includes time, money, skills, relationships, and any external factors you can't control. Don't just ask whether it's theoretically possible. Ask whether it's realistically achievable for you specifically. Consider your other commitments, your actual availability, your real skill level, and your genuine motivation to follow through. A solution that looks perfect on paper but requires you to completely change your personality or life circumstances probably isn't your best option. The second criterion is impact potential. How much would each solution actually improve your situation if implemented successfully? Some solutions might be easy to implement but only create minor improvements. Others might be more challenging but completely transform your circumstances. Rate each solution on its potential to address the root cause you identified earlier, not just the surface symptoms. A solution that makes you feel better temporarily but doesn't address underlying patterns will need to be repeated over and over. A solution that addresses the root cause might require more initial effort but creates lasting change. The third criterion is risk assessment. What could go wrong with each solution? What are the potential negative consequences? What would you lose if the solution doesn't work? What bridges might you burn? What opportunities might you miss? This isn't about being pessimistic or talking yourself out of taking action. It's about being realistic, so you can prepare for potential obstacles and make informed decisions. Some risks are worth taking because the potential rewards justify them. Others aren't worth the potential downside. The fourth criterion is time horizon analysis. How long will each solution take to show results? Do you need immediate relief, or can you invest in longer-term approaches? Are you dealing with a crisis that requires quick action, or a chronic issue that needs sustainable change? Match your solution timeline to your actual needs. If you're in financial crisis, you might need quick income generation, even if it's not your ideal career direction. If you're dealing with a relationship pattern that's been building for years, you might need to commit to a longer-term approach, even if it doesn't show immediate results. The fifth criterion is alignment assessment. How well does each solution align with your values, goals, and identity? Will implementing this solution move you toward the person you want to become? Or will it require you to act in ways that feel inauthentic? Solutions that require you to violate your core values or compromise your integrity might work short-term but create new problems. Solutions that align with your natural strengths and authentic self are more likely to be sustainable and personally satisfying. The sixth criterion is learning potential. What will you gain from attempting each solution, regardless of whether it succeeds completely? Will you develop new skills, build valuable relationships, gain important insights, create opportunities for future solutions? Sometimes a solution is worth trying not because it's guaranteed to work, but because the attempt itself will teach you something valuable or put you in position for better opportunities. Failure can be a setup for future success if you're learning and building capacity. The seventh criterion is reversibility. How easily can you undo or change course if the solution doesn't work as expected? Some solutions are highly reversible with minimal cost. Others involve commitments that are difficult or expensive to change. Generally, start with more reversible solutions unless you have compelling reasons to make irreversible commitments. This allows you to test approaches, gather real-world feedback, and adjust your strategy based on actual results rather than theoretical assumptions. The eighth criterion is scalability. Can this solution grow with you, or will you outgrow it quickly? If the solution works, can you expand or enhance it? If you're building something, can it handle increased demand or complexity? This is particularly important for business solutions, career strategies, and relationship approaches. A solution that works at a small scale but breaks down when you try to expand. It might not be the best long-term choice. After evaluating each solution against these criteria, you'll likely find that no single approach is perfect across all dimensions. This is normal and expected. The goal isn't to find a perfect solution, but to find the best available option given your circumstances. Create a simple scoring system. Rate each solution from 1 to 5 on each criterion that's important for your situation. Add up the scores to get an overall ranking. But don't just go with the highest score automatically. Look at the pattern of strengths and weaknesses. A solution with a high overall score but very low feasibility probably isn't your best choice. A solution with moderate scores across all criteria might be more practical than one with extremely high impact potential but high risk and low feasibility. Consider combination approaches. Can you implement parts of multiple solutions? Can you sequence solutions, starting with one approach and transitioning to another as your circumstances improve? Can you hedge your bets by pursuing multiple solutions simultaneously? The most important thing is to make a decision and commit to testing it. Analysis paralysis kills more dreams than failure ever will. You can't know for certain how well a solution will work until you try it. Perfect information is rarely available, and waiting for certainty is usually just procrastination disguised as prudence. Set clear criteria for success and failure before you start implementing. How will you know if the solution is working? What metrics will you track? How long will you test the approach before evaluating its effectiveness? What will cause you to modify the approach versus abandoning it completely? This evaluation framework prevents you from getting emotionally attached to solutions that aren't working and helps you make objective decisions based on evidence rather than hope or stubbornness. It also prevents you from giving up on solutions that are working but just need more time or minor adjustments to reach their full potential. Remember that problem solving is an iterative process. Your first solution attempt rarely solves everything perfectly, but each attempt gives you better information for the next iteration. The goal is progress, not perfection. Chapter 6. Choosing the right solution is only half the battle. Implementation is where most people fail spectacularly. They have great plans, clear strategies, and logical approaches, but they can't execute consistently. They start strong, hit obstacles, lose motivation, and abandon their solution before it has time to work. The difference between people who solve problems permanently and people who stay stuck isn't intelligence or resources. It's their ability to execute solutions systematically and persistently until they get results. Implementation is a skill that can be learned and mastered. The first principle of successful implementation is starting before you're ready. Most people wait until conditions are perfect, until they have all the information, until they feel completely confident. This is a trap. Perfect conditions never exist, complete information is never available, and confidence comes from action, not preparation. Elite problem solvers start with whatever they have, wherever they are right now. They understand that implementation reveals information that planning can't provide. They know that taking imperfect action generates momentum, feedback, and opportunities that staying in planning mode never will. Your implementation strategy should follow the minimum viable action principle. What's the smallest possible step you can take today that moves you toward your solution? Don't worry about the perfect first step or the complete plan. Focus on the next logical action that requires the least resistance and provides the most learning. The second principle is designing your environment for success. Your willpower is limited and unreliable. If your solution depends on constant self-discipline and motivation, it will fail when life gets stressful or when your enthusiasm wanes. Instead, design your environment so that the right choices become automatic and the wrong choices become difficult. If your solution involves exercise, set out your workout clothes the night before. If it involves eating better, remove tempting foods from your house and stock it with healthy options. If it involves focusing on important work, create a dedicated workspace and eliminate digital distractions. If it involves improving relationships, schedule regular check-ins and communication sessions. The third principle is implementation tracking. You can't manage what you don't measure. Create simple systems to track your progress, not just your final results. Track your actions, not just your outcomes. Track your consistency, not just your performance. Use daily check-ins, weekly reviews, and monthly assessments to monitor how well you're executing your solution. Identify patterns in what works and what doesn't. Adjust your approach based on real data rather than feelings or assumptions. The fourth principle is obstacle anticipation. Every solution will face obstacles. Instead of hoping obstacles won't appear, plan for them in advance. Ask yourself what could prevent you from implementing your solution. What external barriers might arise? What internal resistance might you face? What competing priorities might interfere? For each potential obstacle, develop a specific response strategy. If you know you tend to lose motivation after 2 weeks, plan exactly how you'll handle that motivation dip. If you know certain people discourage your efforts, plan how you'll limit their influence. If you know you struggle with time management, plan specific scheduling and prioritization systems. The fifth principle is progress celebration. Most people only celebrate final victories, but implementation requires sustaining motivation over time. Celebrate small wins, consistent execution, and progress milestones. This isn't about lowering your standards or being satisfied with mediocrity. It's about maintaining the psychological fuel needed for long-term execution. Create specific celebration rituals for different types of progress. Acknowledge daily consistency, weekly achievements, and monthly milestones. Share your progress with supportive people who understand your journey. Document your improvements so you can see how far you've come during difficult moments. The sixth principle is iteration and optimization. Your first implementation attempt won't be perfect. Expect to refine your approach based on real-world feedback. The goal isn't to execute your original plan flawlessly. The goal is to achieve your desired outcome, even if that requires modifying your strategy. Build review cycles into your implementation process. Weekly reviews to assess what's working and what isn't. Monthly reviews to make strategic adjustments. Quarterly reviews to evaluate whether your solution is still the right approach for your evolving situation. The seventh principle is accountability systems. External accountability dramatically increases implementation success rates. This could be a coach, mentor, accountability partner, support group, or public commitment. The key is creating consequences for not following through and support for staying on track. Choose accountability that matches your personality and situation. Some people thrive with public commitments and social pressure. Others prefer private accountability with trusted individuals. Some respond to financial stakes or competitive elements. Find what motivates you specifically. The eighth principle is habit integration. The most sustainable solutions become habits rather than conscious decisions. Look for ways to integrate your solution into existing routines and systems. Attach new behaviors to established habits. Create environmental triggers that prompt the right actions automatically. If your solution involves daily actions, connect them to things you already do consistently. If you always drink coffee in the morning, connect your new behavior to your coffee routine. If you always check your phone before bed, use that as a trigger for a new evening practice. The final principle is persistence through plateaus. Every implementation process includes periods where progress seems to stop or slow dramatically. These plateaus are normal and temporary, but they're where most people quit. Understanding this pattern and preparing for it psychologically is crucial for long-term success. Plateaus often occur right before major breakthroughs. Your brain and circumstances are adapting to new patterns, but the visible results haven't caught up yet. During plateaus, focus on consistency rather than intensity. Trust the process and continue executing even when you can't see immediate progress. Remember that implementation is a skill. The more problems you solve using systematic implementation, the better you become at executing solutions quickly and effectively. Each successful implementation builds your confidence and competence for future challenges. Chapter 7. The most sophisticated problem-solving framework in the world is useless if you fall apart mentally when facing real challenges. Your ability to think clearly, stay focused, and maintain perspective under pressure determines whether you'll successfully implement solutions or abandon them when things get difficult. Mental resilience isn't about being tough or emotionless. It's about developing the psychological skills to process stress, uncertainty, and setbacks without losing your ability to think strategically and act effectively. It's about maintaining your problem-solving capacity even when your emotions are activated and your circumstances are chaotic. The first component of mental resilience is emotional regulation mastery. Your emotions provide valuable information, but they can also hijack your decision-making and cloud your judgment. Learning to acknowledge emotions without being controlled by them is fundamental to clear thinking under pressure. When you feel strong emotions arising, use the stop technique. Stop whatever you're doing. Take a deep breath and notice what you're feeling. Observe the thoughts and physical sensations without judging them. Proceed with conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Practice the 6-3-6 breathing pattern when you need to calm your nervous system quickly. Breathe in for 6 counts, hold for 3 counts, breathe out for 6 counts. Repeat this pattern for 2 minutes. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system and shifts you from reactive mode to responsive mode. The second component is cognitive flexibility. Rigid thinking kills problem-solving effectiveness. When your initial approach doesn't work, you need to shift perspectives, try different strategies, and remain open to unexpected solutions. This requires training your mind to hold multiple possibilities simultaneously. Practice the both and thinking pattern instead of either or thinking. Instead of seeing situations as completely good or completely bad, look for how they might contain both positive and negative elements. Instead of seeing solutions as perfect or worthless, evaluate their partial benefits and limitations. Develop your ability to zoom in and zoom out mentally. When you're overwhelmed by details, practice zooming out to see the bigger picture and long-term perspective. When you're paralyzed by the magnitude of a problem, zoom in to identify specific, manageable actions you can take immediately. The third component is uncertainty tolerance. Most problems don't have clear, guaranteed solutions. You have to take action without knowing exactly how things will turn out. People who can't tolerate uncertainty either avoid taking action or become paralyzed by anxiety about potential negative outcomes. Reframe uncertainty from a threat to an opportunity. Uncertainty means that negative outcomes aren't guaranteed any more than positive outcomes are. It means you have influence over the results through your choices and actions. It means possibilities exist that you haven't considered yet. Practice making decisions with incomplete information. Start with low-stakes decisions and gradually work up to more significant choices. Notice that you can make good decisions without perfect certainty. Build evidence that uncertainty doesn't prevent success. The fourth component is failure reframing. Most people avoid attempting solutions because they're afraid of failure. But failure is information, not condemnation. It tells you what doesn't work so you can adjust your approach. It builds resilience and problem-solving capacity. It often leads to better solutions than you would have found otherwise. Adopt the scientist mindset toward your problem-solving efforts. Scientists don't consider failed experiments as personal failures. They see them as data points that contribute to eventual success. Each failed approach eliminates one possibility and moves you closer to the solution that will work. Create a failure learning system. When something doesn't work as expected, ask specific questions. What exactly didn't work? What did work partially? What assumptions were incorrect? What would you do differently next time? What did you learn that you can apply to future challenges? The fifth component is stress inoculation. You can't eliminate stress from problem solving, but you can build your capacity to perform well under stress. This requires gradually exposing yourself to manageable levels of pressure and uncertainty while practicing your problem-solving skills. Deliberately practice solving problems under time, pressure, or with distractions present. Work on challenging puzzles when you're tired or stressed. Make decisions quickly when the stakes are low. This builds your confidence in your ability to think clearly, even when conditions aren't ideal. The sixth component is identity resilience. Many people tie their self-worth to their success at solving specific problems. When they struggle or fail, they take it as evidence that they're incompetent or inadequate. This creates a downward spiral where emotional distress impairs problem-solving ability. Separate your identity from your problem-solving outcomes. You are not your problems, and your worth as a person isn't determined by your ability to solve every challenge perfectly. You are someone who solves problems, learns from setbacks, and grows stronger through challenges. The seventh component is support system activation. Resilience isn't about handling everything alone. It's about knowing when and how to access help, guidance, and emotional support. Identify the people who can provide different types of assistance during difficult problem-solving periods. Create your resilient support network before you need it. Identify people who can provide practical advice, emotional encouragement, alternative perspectives, accountability, and professional expertise. Maintain these relationships during good times so they're available during challenging times. The eighth component is recovery and renewal. Sustained problem-solving requires periods of rest and renewal. You can't maintain peak performance indefinitely. Building recovery periods into your problem-solving process prevents burnout and maintains long-term effectiveness. Practice active recovery techniques that restore your mental energy and perspective. This might include physical exercise, meditation, time in nature, creative activities, or social connection with supportive people. Find what genuinely renews you and build it into your routine. The final component is meaning-making. Problems are easier to face when you understand how solving them connects to your larger purpose and values. When you can see how your current challenges contribute to your growth, serve others, or advance important causes, you can endure temporary discomfort for meaningful long-term benefits. Connect your problem-solving efforts to your deepest values and highest aspirations. How does solving this problem make you a better person? How does it serve people you care about? How does it contribute to causes you believe in? How does it move you toward the life you want to create? Mental resilience is like physical fitness. It requires consistent practice and gradually increasing challenges. But once developed, it becomes one of your most valuable assets, enabling you to tackle problems that would overwhelm less resilient people. Chapter 8. Once you've mastered the foundational problem-solving skills, you're ready for advanced techniques that handle complex, multi-dimensional challenges. These are the strategies that separate good problem solvers from exceptional ones. The approaches that work when simple solutions fail. The first advanced technique is systems intervention. Most persistent problems exist within systems that maintain and reinforce them. You can't solve these problems by addressing isolated components. You have to intervene at the systems level to create lasting change. Map the entire system that surrounds your problem. Include all the people, processes, environments, incentives, and feedback loops that influence the situation. Look for leverage points where small changes can create cascading effects throughout the system. Leverage points often exist in information flows, decision-making authority, resource allocation, or cultural norms. Sometimes, changing who has access to information transforms how decisions are made. Sometimes, shifting budget priorities eliminates the conditions that create problems. Sometimes, challenging unspoken rules opens up new possibilities. The second technique is paradoxical thinking. Some problems can only be solved by doing the opposite of what seems logical. This requires the mental flexibility to consider approaches that contradict conventional wisdom or your initial instincts. If your problem is feeling overwhelmed by too many responsibilities, the paradoxical solution might be taking on one additional responsibility that forces you to become more efficient with everything else. If your problem is social anxiety, the solution might be deliberately putting yourself in more social situations rather than avoiding them. Practice asking, what if the opposite approach would work better? What if the thing I'm avoiding is actually the solution? What if my resistance to certain actions is exactly why those actions might be effective? The third technique is multi-level problem solving. Complex challenges often exist simultaneously at multiple levels: personal, interpersonal, organizational, and societal. You need different strategies for each level and coordination between your approaches. If your problem is career dissatisfaction, the personal level might involve clarifying your values and developing new skills. The interpersonal level might involve negotiating with your boss or building new professional relationships. The organizational level might involve advocating for policy changes or cultural shifts. The societal level might involve industry-wide trends or economic factors. Address multiple levels simultaneously rather than assuming that fixing one level will solve everything. Sometimes, personal changes enable interpersonal improvements, which create organizational opportunities, which contribute to broader societal shifts. The fourth technique is temporal problem solving. Some problems can only be solved across time through carefully sequenced actions. You can't do everything at once, but you can create a timeline where each phase builds on previous accomplishments. If your problem is launching a business while maintaining financial stability, your temporal solution might involve building skills and saving money in phase 1. developing products and testing markets in Phase 2, transitioning to part-time employment in Phase 3, and launching full-time in Phase 4. Design your problem-solving timeline to account for learning curves, relationship building, resource accumulation, and market timing. Some solutions require patience and strategic sequencing, rather than immediate action. The fifth technique is constraint leverage. Instead of seeing limitations as barriers, use them as creative catalysts. Constraints force innovation and eliminate options that weren't really viable anyway. If you have limited financial resources, that constraint might force you to develop solutions that are more creative, sustainable, and scalable than expensive approaches. If you have limited time, that constraint might force you to focus only on high-impact activities and eliminate everything non-essential. List all your constraints and ask how each one might actually help you find better solutions. What possibilities do these limitations open up? What approaches do they make necessary that you wouldn't have considered otherwise? The sixth technique is stakeholder orchestration. Complex problems usually involve multiple people with different perspectives, priorities, and resources. Instead of trying to solve these problems unilaterally, orchestrate collaborative solutions that align everyone's interests. Map all the stakeholders who are affected by or could influence your problem. Understand what each stakeholder wants, what they're afraid of, what resources they control, and what would motivate them to support your solution. Design solutions that create value for multiple stakeholders simultaneously. The best solutions turn potential opponents into allies by addressing their concerns and leveraging their strengths. The seventh technique is scenario planning. When facing uncertainty about future conditions, develop multiple solution pathways for different possible scenarios. This prevents you from being caught off guard and allows you to adapt quickly when circumstances change. Identify the key uncertainties that could affect your problem and solution. Create 3 to 5 scenarios that represent different combinations of these uncertainties. Develop contingent solutions for each scenario and identify actions that work across multiple scenarios. This approach is particularly valuable for career decisions, business planning, relationship challenges, and financial planning where external factors beyond your control significantly influence outcomes. The eighth technique is meta-problem analysis. Sometimes your problem isn't the obvious issue you're trying to solve. It's your approach to problems in general. Step back and examine your problem-solving patterns, assumptions, and blind spots. Do you consistently choose solutions that look good on paper but don't account for your actual personality and preferences? Do you avoid certain types of solutions because of fear or past experiences? Do you underestimate implementation challenges or overestimate your available resources? Solving the meta problem often makes individual problems much easier to handle. If you realize that you consistently underestimate time requirements, you can adjust all your future planning accordingly. The ninth technique is resource synthesis. Advanced problems often require combining resources in novel ways, rather than applying single resources directly. Look for ways to combine your time, money, skills, relationships, and opportunities to create solutions that wouldn't be possible using any single resource. You might combine your professional expertise with someone else's network to create business opportunities. You might combine your available time with online learning resources to develop valuable skills. You might combine your financial resources with other people's time and energy to implement solutions you couldn't handle alone. The final advanced technique is solution evolution. The best solutions aren't static. They evolve and improve over time through feedback, changing circumstances, and new opportunities. Design your solutions to be adaptive and improvable rather than fixed and permanent. Build learning mechanisms into your solutions so you can continuously refine and optimize them. Create feedback loops that provide information about what's working and what isn't. Stay alert to new resources, opportunities, and insights that could enhance your approach. Plan for solution, evolution from the beginning, rather than hoping your first approach will be perfect. Expect that your solution will need to change and improve over time, and design flexibility into your implementation process. These advanced techniques require practice and experience to master. Start by applying them to smaller, less critical problems to build your skills before tackling major life challenges. The investment in developing these capabilities will pay dividends for the rest of your problem-solving career. Chapter 9. Real-world problems rarely exist in isolation. They come in clusters, with multiple interconnected challenges that influence each other in complex ways. These multi-layered problems require sophisticated approaches that address several issues simultaneously while managing the relationships between them. The first step in handling complex problem clusters is relationship mapping. You need to understand how your problems connect to and influence each other. Some problems are causes of other problems. Some are symptoms of deeper issues. Some are completely separate, but compete for the same resources or attention. Create a visual map that shows all your current challenges and draws lines connecting related problems. Use different types of lines to show different relationships. Solid lines for direct causal relationships, dotted lines for indirect influences, arrows to show direction of influence, and different colors to show positive or negative impacts. This mapping process often reveals that what seemed like 5 separate problems is actually one core issue creating multiple symptoms. Or it might show that 2 problems are creating a reinforcing cycle that makes both worse. Understanding these relationships prevents you from solving one problem in a way that makes others worse. The second step is priority sequencing. You can't solve everything at once, but the order in which you tackle problems matters enormously. Some problems need to be solved before others become solvable. Some problems, when solved, make other problems disappear automatically. Some problems get worse if left unaddressed while you work on other issues. Identify which problems are foundational versus which are dependent. Foundational problems enable or prevent solutions to other problems. Dependent problems can only be solved after foundational issues are addressed. For example, if you have both financial stress and relationship problems, and the relationship problems are largely caused by financial pressure, addressing the financial situation first might resolve both issues. Look for problems that serve as leverage points. These are challenges that, when solved, create positive effects across multiple areas of your life. Solving one leverage point problem might eliminate or significantly reduce several dependent problems. The third step is resource allocation strategy. Complex problem clusters demand careful resource management. You have limited time, energy, attention, and money. How you distribute these resources across multiple problems determines your overall success. Use the 80/20 principle to identify which problems deserve the majority of your resources. Usually, a small number of core issues create the majority of your stress and limitation. Focus most of your effort on these high-impact problems while maintaining minimal attention on less critical issues. Create resource budgets for different types of problems. How much time can you dedicate to career issues versus relationship issues versus health issues? How much mental energy can you invest in planning versus execution? How much money can you allocate to different solution attempts? The fourth step is synergy identification. Look for solutions that address multiple problems simultaneously. These synergistic approaches are more efficient than solving each problem separately, and often create momentum that accelerates progress across all areas. If you're dealing with health problems, financial stress, and social isolation, a solution that involves starting a fitness-related side business could address all 3 issues. The business generates income, the fitness component improves your health, and the customer interactions provide social connection. If you're facing career stagnation, skill gaps, and lack of professional network, joining or creating a professional development group could address all three challenges through skill-building activities, networking opportunities, and potential career connections. The fifth step is interference management. Some solutions create interference with other solutions. Working late to advance your career might interfere with family time needed to solve relationship problems. Strict budgeting to solve financial issues might interfere with social activities needed to address isolation problems. Anticipate these conflicts and design solutions that minimize interference. This might involve time scheduling that protects both career advancement and family time. It might involve finding free or low-cost social activities that don't conflict with budgeting goals. Sometimes you need to sequence solutions to avoid interference. Address one problem intensively for a defined period, then shift focus to another problem. This concentrated approach can be more effective than trying to make minimal progress on everything simultaneously. The sixth step is cascading solutions. Some problems, when solved, create conditions that make other problems easier to solve. These cascading effects can be planned and leveraged to accelerate overall progress. Solving a sleep problem might improve your energy and mood, which makes it easier to exercise regularly, which improves your health and confidence, which enhances your work performance and relationships. Instead of treating each issue separately, you solve the sleep problem with the understanding that it will create positive effects across multiple areas. Identify which problems, when solved, would create the most beneficial cascading effects. These become priority problems, not just because of their direct impact, but because of their indirect benefits across your entire problem cluster. The seventh step is system buffer creation. Complex problem solving is inherently unpredictable. Solutions take longer than expected, unexpected obstacles arise, and some approaches fail completely. Building buffers into your system prevents individual setbacks from derailing your entire approach. Create time buffers by planning for solutions to take longer than your best-case estimates. Create resource buffers by maintaining reserves of time, money, and energy for unexpected challenges. Create emotional buffers by building support systems and stress management practices that sustain you through difficult periods. These buffers aren't pessimistic planning. They're realistic preparation that allows you to maintain progress even when individual solutions encounter problems. The eighth step is progress tracking systems. With multiple problems and solutions in play, you need sophisticated tracking systems to monitor progress, identify what's working, and make strategic adjustments. Create dashboards that show progress across all your problem areas. Use simple metrics that capture both leading indicators and lagging results. Track your resource allocation to ensure you're investing effort where it creates the most impact. Review your entire problem cluster weekly to identify emerging patterns, unexpected connections, and necessary strategy adjustments. Monthly reviews should assess whether your overall approach is working and whether your problem priorities need to shift. The final step is adaptive strategy management. Your problem cluster will evolve as you solve individual problems, as your circumstances change, and as you learn more about the relationships between issues. Your strategy needs to evolve accordingly. Build flexibility into your approach. Don't become so committed to your initial plan that you miss opportunities to improve it. Stay alert to new problems that emerge and existing problems that disappear. Adjust your resource allocation as some problems become more critical and others become less important. Expect that solving complex problem clusters takes time and patience. You're not just solving individual problems, you're transforming entire systems of your life. This transformation is worth the effort because it creates lasting change rather than temporary fixes. The people who master complex problem-solving develop a significant advantage in life. They can handle challenges that overwhelm others. They can see opportunities that others miss. They can create solutions that serve multiple purposes and generate compound benefits over time. Chapter 10. The ultimate goal of problem-solving isn't just fixing current issues. It's building systems and capabilities that prevent problems from occurring and allow you to handle future challenges more effectively. This final chapter focuses on creating sustainable problem-solving capacity that serves you for the rest of your life. The first principle of sustainable problem-solving is prevention system design. Most problems are predictable and preventable if you develop the right systems and habits. Instead of constantly reacting to crises, invest energy in preventing problems from reaching crisis level. Analyze your historical problem patterns. What types of challenges do you face repeatedly? What conditions typically precede these problems? What early warning signs could you monitor? Understanding your personal problem patterns allows you to create early intervention systems. If you repeatedly face financial stress, create monitoring systems that alert you to spending patterns before they become problematic. If you repeatedly experience relationship conflicts, develop communication habits that address issues before they escalate. If you repeatedly face health problems, create lifestyle systems that maintain your physical and mental well-being proactively. The second principle is capacity building. Your problem-solving effectiveness depends on your underlying capabilities. Mental clarity, emotional resilience, physical energy, financial resources, social connections, and specialized knowledge. Continuously developing these capabilities makes every future problem easier to handle. Create development plans for each area that affects your problem-solving capacity. Read systematically to expand your knowledge and perspective. Exercise regularly to maintain the physical energy needed for sustained effort. Build and maintain relationships that provide support, advice, and opportunities. Develop financial reserves that give you options during challenging times. Think of capacity building as compound interest for your problem-solving ability. Small, consistent investments in your capabilities create exponential returns over time. The third principle is learning system creation. Every problem you solve teaches you something valuable, but only if you capture and organize those lessons systematically. Create systems that extract maximum learning from every problem-solving experience. After solving any significant problem, conduct a formal lessons learned review. What worked well in your approach? What would you do differently next time? What general principles can you extract from this specific experience? What capabilities did you develop that will help with future challenges? Document these insights in a problem-solving knowledge base that you can reference when facing similar challenges. Over time, this personal knowledge base becomes one of your most valuable resources. The fourth principle is environment optimization. Your physical, social, and information environments significantly influence your problem-solving effectiveness. Deliberately design these environments to support clear thinking, effective action, and continuous improvement. Create physical spaces that promote focus and creativity. Surround yourself with people who challenge your thinking and support your growth. Curate information sources that expand your perspective and provide valuable insights. Eliminate environmental factors that drain your energy or promote ineffective habits. Your environment should make good problem-solving choices automatic and bad choices difficult. This reduces your reliance on willpower and increases your consistency over time. The fifth principle is network development. Most complex problems require resources, knowledge, or perspectives that you don't possess individually. Building a strong network of relationships gives you access to collective intelligence and resources that dramatically expand your problem-solving capacity. Cultivate relationships with people who have different expertise, experiences, and perspectives than you do. Include mentors who can provide wisdom and guidance, peers who can offer collaboration and accountability, and protégés who can provide fresh perspectives and energy. Contribute value to your network before you need assistance. Share knowledge, make introductions, offer support, and celebrate others' successes. This creates a foundation of goodwill that you can draw upon when facing challenging problems. The sixth principle is stress inoculation practice. Regular exposure to manageable challenges builds your capacity to handle larger problems when they arise. Deliberately seek out problems to solve, skills to develop, and challenges to overcome during stable periods. Take on projects that stretch your capabilities slightly beyond your comfort zone. Learn new skills that require persistence and problem solving. Put yourself in situations where you have to think quickly and adapt to unexpected circumstances. This voluntary stress exposure builds confidence and competence that serves you when involuntary problems arise. You develop evidence that you can handle difficult situations, which reduces anxiety and improves performance under pressure. The seventh principle is recovery and renewal integration. Sustainable problem solving requires balancing intense effort with adequate recovery. Build renewal practices into your routine that restore your energy, perspective, and creativity. Different types of renewal serve different purposes. Physical recovery restores your energy and health. Mental recovery clears your thinking and reduces cognitive fatigue. Emotional recovery processes stress and maintains psychological well-being. Spiritual recovery connects you to meaning and purpose. Schedule regular recovery activities and protect that time as carefully as you protect important meetings. Recovery isn't laziness or weakness. It's essential maintenance that keeps your problem-solving capacity functioning at peak levels. The eighth principle is continuous improvement systems. Your problem-solving capabilities should improve throughout your life. Create systems that promote continuous learning, skill development, and strategic refinement. Regularly assess your problem-solving effectiveness and identify areas for improvement. Seek out new techniques, frameworks, and perspectives that could enhance your approach. Practice advanced problem-solving skills on low-stakes challenges to prepare for high-stakes situations. Set annual goals for improving specific aspects of your problem-solving capacity. This might involve developing emotional regulation skills, learning new analytical techniques, building particular types of relationships, or gaining expertise in areas relevant to your goals. The ninth principle is legacy creation. The highest level of problem solving is developing the ability to solve problems that benefit others and create positive change beyond your immediate circumstances. This gives your problem-solving efforts meaning and impact that sustain motivation through difficult periods. Look for ways to apply your problem-solving skills to challenges in your community, profession, or areas of interest. Mentor others who are developing their problem-solving capabilities. Share your insights and techniques with people who could benefit from them. Creating positive impact through problem-solving generates energy and satisfaction that fuel continued growth and effectiveness. It also connects you to larger purposes that provide resilience during personal challenges. The final principle is integration and mastery. All of these principles work together to create a comprehensive problem-solving lifestyle. The goal isn't to apply them perfectly, but to integrate them into your daily life in ways that feel natural and sustainable. Start with the principles that resonate most strongly with you and gradually incorporate others as they become relevant to your circumstances. Experiment with different approaches and adapt them to fit your personality, goals, and lifestyle. Remember that becoming an exceptional problem solver is a lifelong journey. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to practice and improve. Every problem you solve makes you more capable of handling future challenges. Every system you build makes your life more resilient and effective. The compound effects of sustained problem-solving development are extraordinary. Over time, you become someone who thrives in uncertainty, finds opportunities in challenges, and creates solutions that others don't see. You become a person who doesn't just survive problems but uses them as fuel for growth and contribution. This is your invitation to that transformation. The frameworks, techniques, and principles you've learned are tools. Your commitment to using them consistently is what will change your life. Chapter 11. There's a level of problem-solving mastery that transcends techniques and frameworks. It's the ability to see problems that others don't recognize, to find solutions in seemingly impossible situations, and to transform obstacles into opportunities so naturally that it appears effortless. This is the domain of elite problem solvers who operate at a completely different level than most people. The first characteristic of mastery-level problem solving is pattern recognition at scale. Elite problem solvers have encountered so many challenges across different domains that they can instantly recognize patterns and apply solutions from completely different contexts. They see that a relationship problem has the same underlying structure as a business problem they solved 5 years ago. This cross-domain pattern recognition comes from deliberately studying problems outside your normal experience. Read case studies from different industries, cultures, and time periods. Study how problems are solved in nature, in military strategy, in art, and in science. The more diverse your problem-solving exposure, the more patterns you can recognize and adapt. The second characteristic is intuitive problem sensing. Masters develop an almost supernatural ability to sense problems before they become obvious. They notice subtle signals, energy shifts, and environmental changes that indicate emerging challenges. This early detection allows them to intervene before problems reach crisis level. Develop your problem-sensing abilities by paying attention to weak signals in all areas of your life. Notice when people's behavior changes slightly. Pay attention to small inefficiencies or inconsistencies. Trust gut feelings that something isn't quite right, even when you can't articulate why. The third characteristic is elegant solution design. Masters find solutions that solve multiple problems simultaneously while using minimal resources and creating positive side effects. Their solutions feel inevitable in retrospect, but were completely non-obvious before they revealed them. Train yourself to look for elegant solutions by always asking, how could this solution serve multiple purposes? How could we achieve the desired outcome with less effort? What positive side effects could we create? How could this solution become self-sustaining or self-improving? The fourth characteristic is paradox navigation. The most complex problems contain contradictions that seem impossible to resolve. Masters have learned to hold paradoxes without needing to resolve them immediately and to find solutions that transcend apparent contradictions rather than choosing sides. Practice paradoxical thinking by identifying the contradictions in your current challenges. Instead of seeing them as barriers, ask how both sides of the contradiction might be true. Look for solutions that honor multiple contradictory requirements simultaneously. The fifth characteristic is metacognitive awareness. Masters constantly monitor their own thinking processes while problem solving. They notice when they're falling into cognitive traps, when their emotions are influencing their judgment, and when they need to shift their approach. Develop this awareness by regularly stepping back from problems to observe how you're thinking about them. What assumptions are you making? What emotions are you feeling? What thinking patterns are you using? This observer perspective allows you to adjust your approach in real time. The sixth characteristic is contextual adaptability. Masters understand that the same problem requires different solutions in different contexts. They don't have favorite techniques that they try to apply everywhere. They assess each situation fresh and adapt their approach accordingly. Build adaptability by studying how the same basic problems are solved differently across various contexts. How is leadership exercised differently in military, business, family, and creative environments? How do different cultures approach conflict resolution or decision-making? The seventh characteristic is systemic intervention mastery. Masters see the entire ecosystem surrounding a problem and know exactly where to apply pressure to create maximum positive change. They find the leverage points that others miss because they understand systems at a deeper level. Study systems thinking extensively. Practice mapping the systems surrounding your problems and identifying leverage points. Look for places where small changes can create cascading positive effects throughout the entire system. The final characteristic of mastery is solution artistry. Masters don't just solve problems, they solve them in ways that are beautiful, meaningful, and inspiring to others. Their solutions serve as examples that elevate the problem-solving capacity of everyone around them. Approach your problem-solving with artistic sensibility. How can your solution be not just effective, but also elegant and inspiring? How can the process of solving this problem contribute to something larger than just fixing the immediate issue? Remember that mastery is a journey, not a destination. Even the most skilled problem solvers continue learning and growing throughout their lives. The goal isn't perfection, but continuous improvement and increasing impact through more effective problem solving. Chapter 12. Understanding problem solving in theory is different from applying it in the messy complexity of real life. Every domain has its unique challenges, constraints, and dynamics that require specialized approaches while still following universal principles. Let's examine how elite problem solving applies to the most common areas of human struggle. In career and professional challenges, the key is understanding that most career problems are actually systems problems. If you're stuck in a dead-end job, the problem isn't just your current position. It's the entire system of skills, relationships, market positioning, and personal branding that led to your current situation. Map your entire professional ecosystem. Your skills relative to market demand, your network strength and diversity, your reputation in your field, your financial runway for making changes, and the industry trends affecting your options. Most people try to solve career problems by looking for new jobs within the same system that created their current limitations. Elite career problem solving involves building what you need while you still have stability. Develop valuable skills during stable periods. Build relationships before you need them. Establish a reputation for excellence before you need to leverage it. Create financial buffers before you need to take risks. In relationship challenges, recognize that most problems stem from mismatched expectations, poor communication systems, or incompatible growth trajectories. The solution is rarely changing the other person or finding someone different. It's usually developing better systems for understanding, communication, and mutual support. Apply systems thinking to relationships by mapping the patterns that create conflict, the unspoken expectations that create disappointment, and the communication breakdowns that create distance. Design new systems for regular check-ins, conflict resolution, and supporting each other's growth. Most relationship problems are actually personal development problems disguised as interpersonal issues. If you keep having the same type of conflict with different people, the pattern is coming from you. Solve the personal pattern, and the relationship problems often resolve naturally. In health and wellness challenges, understand that most problems are lifestyle design problems rather than willpower problems. If you can't maintain healthy habits, the issue isn't your lack of discipline. It's that you haven't designed an environment and system that makes healthy choices easier than unhealthy ones. Map your entire lifestyle system. your schedule, environment, social influences, stress levels, and available time and energy. Design systems that automate healthy choices and eliminate the need for constant decision-making about diet, exercise, and self-care. Financial problems almost always involve either income generation, expense management, or money mindset issues. Most people focus exclusively on budgeting and expense cutting while ignoring income generation and psychological factors. Approach financial challenges systemically. Yes, track and optimize expenses, but also develop systems for increasing your earning capacity over time. Address the beliefs and emotions that drive financial decisions. Build multiple income streams that provide security and flexibility. Most importantly, understand that financial problems are often symptoms of other issues. Career limitations, lack of valuable skills, poor planning systems, or emotional spending patterns solve the underlying issue. And the financial symptoms often improve naturally. In personal development challenges, recognize that lasting change requires changing identity and environment, not just behavior. If you want to become more disciplined, confident, or creative, you need to design experiences that prove to yourself that you are that type of person. Create identity-building experiences that provide evidence for who you're becoming. If you want to be more confident, put yourself in situations where you can succeed and build competence. If you want to be more creative, engage in creative activities regularly until creativity becomes part of your identity. In family and parenting challenges, understand that most problems involve boundary issues, communication breakdowns, or misaligned values and expectations. Children often act out when family systems are unclear or inconsistent. Apply systems thinking to family dynamics. Create clear, consistent systems for communication, decision-making, conflict resolution, and supporting each person's individual growth within the family unit. Most family problems improve when everyone understands their role and the family operates according to clear, fair principles. In business and entrepreneurial challenges, recognize that most problems fall into categories of market fit, operational efficiency, or leadership effectiveness. Startups fail because they try to solve problems that markets don't actually have, or they have market fit but can't execute efficiently. Apply systematic problem solving to business challenges by first ensuring you're solving a problem that people will pay to solve. Then build minimum viable solutions and iterate based on real customer feedback. Most business problems are solved through faster learning and adaptation, not perfect initial planning. The key insight across all domains is that problems rarely exist in isolation. Career problems affect relationships, which affect health, which affects performance, which affects finances. Elite problem solving involves understanding these interconnections and designing solutions that create positive effects across multiple life areas. Also, remember that different life phases require different problem-solving approaches. The strategies that work in your 20s need modification in your 40s. The solutions that work when you're single need adaptation when you have family responsibilities. Stay flexible and adjust your approach as your circumstances evolve. Chapter 13. The highest level of problem-solving mastery involves teaching others to solve their own problems effectively. When you can help others develop their problem-solving capacity, you multiply your impact and create positive change that extends far beyond your individual efforts. Teaching problem-solving requires a different skill set than solving problems yourself. You need to guide others to insights rather than providing solutions directly. You need to help them develop their own thinking rather than thinking for them. You need to build their confidence and capacity rather than creating dependency. The first principle of teaching problem-solving is leading with questions rather than answers. When someone brings you a problem, your instinct might be to immediately offer solutions or advice. This approach creates dependency and prevents the other person from developing their own problem-solving muscles. Instead, ask questions that guide them through the problem-solving process. What exactly is the problem they're trying to solve? What have they already tried? What patterns do they notice? What resources do they have available? What would success look like? These questions help them develop their own clarity and insights. They arrive at solutions that feel authentic to them rather than imposed from outside. They also build their capacity to ask themselves better questions in future situations. The second principle is teaching frameworks rather than specific solutions. Don't just solve their immediate problem. Teach them frameworks they can apply to similar challenges in the future. Show them how to break down complex problems, how to identify root causes, how to generate multiple solutions. When you teach frameworks, you give people tools they can use independently. They become more capable and confident problem solvers rather than people who need to consult others whenever challenges arise. The third principle is modeling metacognitive awareness. Think out loud about your thinking process when helping others with problems. Show them how you notice your assumptions, how you catch yourself falling into mental traps, how you step back to assess whether your approach is working. This metacognitive modeling is one of the most valuable things you can teach. Most people never learn to observe their own thinking patterns. When you demonstrate this awareness, you give them a skill that improves every aspect of their problem solving. The fourth principle is creating safe experimentation spaces. People need permission to try solutions that might not work, to make mistakes, and to learn through experience. Create environments where failure is treated as information rather than condemnation. Encourage small experiments rather than major life changes. Help them design low-risk tests of potential solutions. Support them through the learning process rather than judging outcomes. This builds their willingness to take action even when they're not certain about results. The fifth principle is building problem-solving confidence. Gradually. Start with problems that are challenging but solvable given their current capacity. Success builds confidence, which enables them to tackle more complex challenges over time. Don't throw people into deep water and expect them to learn to swim. Help them build competence progressively. Celebrate their successes and help them extract lessons from their experiences. When leading teams through problem-solving processes, apply these same principles at group level. Use collaborative frameworks that engage everyone's thinking rather than imposing solutions from leadership. Create psychological safety where team members feel comfortable sharing ideas and concerns. Design team problem-solving sessions that build collective intelligence rather than relying on individual expertise. Use techniques like structured brainstorming, perspective-taking exercises, and systematic evaluation processes that leverage diverse viewpoints. In organizational contexts, focus on building problem-solving culture rather than just solving immediate problems. This involves creating systems for continuous learning, encouraging innovation and experimentation, and rewarding thoughtful analysis rather than just results. Develop organizational frameworks that people can use independently. Create decision-making processes that work even when leadership isn't directly involved. Build learning systems that capture and share insights from successful problem-solving efforts. When mentoring individuals in problem-solving, tailor your approach to their learning style and experience level. Some people learn best through structured frameworks, while others prefer learning through stories and examples. Some need detailed guidance, while others just need encouragement to trust their instincts. Pay attention to their natural problem-solving strengths and help them build on those. Don't try to turn everyone into the same type of problem solver. Help them develop their authentic problem-solving style while expanding their capabilities. Remember that teaching problem-solving is itself a complex problem that requires ongoing refinement. Pay attention to what works with different people and situations. Continuously improve your ability to guide others to effective solutions. The ultimate goal is to create problem solvers who surpass your own capabilities. When you successfully teach someone to solve problems more effectively than they could before, you've created lasting, positive change that continues to generate benefits long after your direct involvement ends. This multiplication effect is how individual problem-solving mastery becomes societal transformation. Each person who develops strong problem-solving capabilities can teach others, creating expanding networks of effective problem solvers who tackle challenges at every level of society. Chapter 14. As you develop mastery in problem solving, you'll discover that the greatest challenges and opportunities lie in applying these skills to problems that extend beyond your immediate personal circumstances. This is where problem solving becomes a force for positive change in your community and the world. The first level of expanded impact involves community problem solving. Every community faces challenges that affect multiple people but seem too complex or entrenched for individuals to address. These might include local economic issues, environmental problems, social tensions, or systemic inefficiencies in local institutions. Apply the same systematic approach to community problems that you use for personal challenges. Map the stakeholders, understand the underlying systems, identify root causes, and generate collaborative solutions that serve multiple interests simultaneously. The key difference is that community problems require building consensus and coordinating multiple people with different perspectives and priorities. Your role becomes orchestrating collective problem solving rather than solving problems unilaterally. Start by identifying community problems that align with your values and leverage your unique strengths and resources. You don't have to tackle every community issue. Focus on areas where you can make meaningful contributions while developing your skills in collective problem solving. The second level involves professional and industry impact. Every profession and industry has persistent problems that limit effectiveness, create inefficiencies, or prevent optimal outcomes. These problems often persist because people within the system become accustomed to them or don't believe change is possible. Your outsider perspective, combined with systematic problem-solving skills, can reveal solutions that insiders miss. You can often apply insights from other domains to challenges that have been resistant to traditional approaches. Look for problems in your professional sphere that affect many people but haven't been adequately addressed. These might involve workflow inefficiencies, communication breakdowns, resource allocation issues, or misaligned incentives. The third level involves innovation and entrepreneurship. Some problems can only be solved through creating new products, services, or business models that didn't previously exist. This requires combining problem-solving skills with creativity, market understanding, and execution capability. Entrepreneurial problem-solving involves identifying problems that many people face, but no one has solved effectively. Then building scalable solutions that can reach large numbers of people. This doesn't necessarily mean starting a traditional business. Social entrepreneurs create solutions for social problems. Artists solve problems related to meaning, beauty, and human expression. Activists solve problems related to justice and systemic change. The fourth level involves systemic and policy impact. Some problems can only be solved through changes to laws, regulations, institutional practices, or cultural norms. These systemic problems require working within political and social systems to create change at scale. Systemic problem-solving requires understanding how institutions work, how decisions are made, and how change happens within complex systems. It often involves building coalitions, influencing decision-makers, and creating pressure for change through various channels. This type of problem-solving requires patience and persistence, as systemic change often takes years or decades to achieve. But the impact can be enormous, affecting millions of people and future generations. As you expand your problem-solving impact, remember several key principles. First, start where you are with what you have. You don't need to wait until you've achieved perfect mastery to begin contributing to larger problems. Your current skills and resources can make meaningful contributions right now. Second, focus on leverage points where your unique combination of skills, knowledge, and resources can create disproportionate impact. Don't try to work on every problem. Find the intersection between what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and what the world needs. Third, build collaborative relationships with others who share your commitment to positive change. Complex problems require diverse perspectives and complementary skills. Your effectiveness will be multiplied when you work with others rather than trying to create change alone. Fourth, maintain long-term perspective while taking immediate action. Significant problems took time to develop and will take time to solve. Maintain hope and persistence, even when progress seems slow. Finally, remember that working on problems beyond yourself is not just about external impact. It's also about personal growth and meaning. People who dedicate their problem-solving skills to serving others often find that this work provides the deepest satisfaction and sense of purpose in their lives. The transition from personal problem-solving to contributing to larger challenges is a natural evolution for people who develop mastery in these skills. As you become more effective at solving your own problems, you naturally become interested in helping others solve theirs, and, eventually, in tackling the systemic issues that create problems for many people. This progression from personal mastery to global contribution represents the highest expression of problem-solving skills. It's how individual development becomes social transformation, and how personal growth contributes to the advancement of human civilization. Chapter 15. You now possess a complete framework for solving any problem you will ever face. More importantly, you understand that becoming an exceptional problem solver isn't about memorizing techniques or following rigid processes. It's about developing a way of thinking and being that transforms challenges into opportunities for growth and contribution. The journey of problem-solving mastery changes you at fundamental levels. It builds confidence because you develop evidence that you can handle whatever life throws at you. It builds resilience because you learn to see obstacles as information rather than barriers. It builds wisdom because you learn to see patterns and connections that others miss. But the most profound transformation is that you stop being a victim of your circumstances and become the active creator of your life. Problems no longer happen to you. They become raw material for building the life you want to live. This shift in identity is what separates people who occasionally solve problems from people who consistently create extraordinary results. When you see yourself as someone who solves problems, you unconsciously seek out challenges that help you grow. When others see obstacles, you see opportunities. The ripple effects of this transformation extend far beyond your individual success. People around you begin to benefit from your problem-solving capabilities. You become someone others turn to for guidance and support. You model what's possible when someone develops these skills systematically. Your family benefits because you create more stability, opportunity, and positive momentum in all areas of life. Your career advances because employers and clients value people who can reliably solve difficult challenges. Your relationships improve because you bring solution-oriented thinking to interpersonal difficulties. Your community benefits because you become someone who takes initiative to address local problems rather than just complaining about them. Society benefits because you contribute to the pool of people who can tackle complex challenges that affect large numbers of people. But remember that mastery is a journey, not a destination. Every problem you solve teaches you something new. Every challenge you face builds additional capacity. Every technique you practice strengthens your problem-solving muscles. The frameworks you've learned provide structure, but your unique experiences, insights, and creative applications will make your problem-solving approach distinctly your own. Trust yourself to adapt these tools to your personality, circumstances, and goals. Stay curious about new approaches and perspectives. The field of problem-solving continues to evolve as we learn more about human psychology, organizational behavior, and systems thinking. Continue learning and growing throughout your life. Seek out increasingly complex and meaningful problems to solve. The satisfaction and growth that come from solving difficult challenges make the effort worthwhile. Don't settle for easy problems when you have the capacity to tackle significant challenges. Share what you learn with others. Teaching problem-solving to others reinforces your own learning while multiplying your positive impact. Every person you help become a better problem solver creates expanding networks of positive change. Most importantly, remember that the goal isn't to eliminate all problems from your life. Problems are how you grow, how you contribute, and how you discover capabilities you didn't know you possessed. The goal is to become someone who solves problems so effectively that your life becomes a continuous process of positive transformation. The difference between where you are now and where you want to be is simply a series of problems to be solved. With the frameworks, techniques, and mindset you now possess, those problems become stepping stones rather than obstacles. Your future self is already waiting for you on the other side of the problems you're currently facing. Every challenge you solve moves you closer to that person. Every obstacle you overcome makes you stronger and more capable. The time for learning is over. The time for application has begun. Take the next problem in your life and apply everything you've learned. Start the transformation that will define the rest of your life. Your problems are not punishments or barriers. They are your curriculum for becoming the person you were meant to be. Embrace them, solve them, and use them to build a life that matters. The world needs more people who can solve problems effectively. It needs more people who see challenges as opportunities. It needs more people who bring solution-oriented thinking to every situation they encounter. Become one of those people. Start today. Start now. Your future self and everyone whose life you'll touch through your problem-solving capabilities are depending on you to begin. This is your moment. This is your opportunity. This is your invitation to join the ranks of people who don't just survive their challenges, but use them as fuel for extraordinary success and contribution. The choice is yours, but the framework is complete. Everything you need to solve any problem and build any life you choose to create is now within your grasp. Use it.